And welcome back, everybody, to the 32nd annual Starvin for Justice, Fast and Vigil to Abolish the Death Penalty. People who are still straggling in, come on and take a seat. There's a couple of seats left. There's some standing room only in the back. And there's places to sit on the ground. And I promise you, the sun is going to go down. It's going to get a little bit cooler, maybe. And we know what we know is it ain't going to rain tonight, so that's good news. My name's Abe Bonowitz. I'm with Death Penalty Action. I'm going to share a couple things with you. One is why we're here, and then I'm going to hand it over to Julie Rinker, who's going to MC for us tonight. But in particular, I wanted to share a bit about why we're here. Today is July 2nd. And that makes it the 49th anniversary of the Gregg decision. So backing up to Sunday was June 29th, the 53rd anniversary of the date in 1972, when the U.S. Supreme Court, this U.S. Supreme Court, struck down all the death penalty laws in the country, forcing any state that wanted to have a death penalty to write new laws, many of which did. Florida held a special session of its legislature in November of '72 for that purpose, and now is going gangbusters on executions. They just set another date. They're going to, for the second month in a row, have 2 executions in 1 month. They did that in June. They're going to do it in July, and we're afraid that that's going to keep happening. But in any case, July 2nd is that anniversary, and we're here every year. This is the 32nd annual Fast and Vigil to Abolish the Death Penalty. How many people have been here since we started on Saturday night? Okay, so as you see, people come in and people go, and that's okay. We'll be doing this again, sadly, next year. If you come for the whole thing, you come on June 28th and you leave on July 3rd, because we start at midnight and we end at midnight. And if you're fresh to this, today, we've got just under 6 hours left in our fast. Many of us are fasting. How many people are fasting? Fasting is what you make of it. For some of us, it's just giving up chocolate or giving up cigarettes or whatever. Not too many smokers anymore, but for some of us, it's just water only. Whatever it is, we're fasting for and starving for justice. And at midnight, about 11:15, 11:20, we'll circle up here and have a closing togetherness. And at midnight, we will break our fast with a wonderful meal cooked by Julie Rinker, our MC tonight, and others, I'm sure, helped her. And others have brought some things. I do want to point out Laura Charcodian is here. She is one of those people that was arrested with us in 1997. She also brought some beautiful looking chocolate cookies. But Laura has gone from being a lowly activist like all of us to a person that is changing the world as a legislator, Maryland State Delegate. Applause for Laura Charcodian, please. We're not going to make you talk this year, unless you want to say something quickly. But we are often graced by legislators who sometimes come and speak. But this is one that came up through the ranks. She was starving with us and sunning, and burning in the sun, and got arrested with us in 1997. And like all of us, is making a difference in the world. In particular, I want to applaud you, Laura. Thank you. Thank you. I think it was 2013, wasn't it? Was it 12? Who's counting, right? In any case, a couple other things. So this event is sponsored by the Abolitionist Action Committee, which is now a project of Death Penalty Action, which is very pleased to be able to provide the organizing and a lot of the fundraising. And we're grateful for every single supporter, every single sponsor. They're all listed on the webpage. who helped make this happen. If you go to deathpenaltyaction.org, that's where you'll find petitions for every execution that is scheduled. We have a little bit of catching up to do because there are several executions that were scheduled this week, and we'll get to those petitions whenever we get to them. Also on our webpage, you'll find things like this, campaigns that we have for different cases. This is a rare one, Luigi Mangione. He is facing a federal death sentence, even though his crime was in New York and has not been convicted and all of that. But just because it's so high profile, we put a petition together. We're getting a lot of emails. So are other organizations. What are you doing for this guy? And we can't do anything for him, but we can make sure people know that he doesn't need to be executed, even if he's found guilty. But that's just one of the campaigns. So there's another sign that we brought out here. Laura, you carried out the other signs, which was the other. Oh, there it is. Yes. I just wanted to mention these cases. This is the other one that I want to highlight and flag and ask for your prayers and your thoughts, because that's not all we can do for Melissa Lucio right now while we wait. Melissa Lucio was 2 days from execution when she got a stay from the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals, which ordered an evidentiary hearing. Was a film. Watch the film. And you can find all this at freemelissalucio.org, which is one of our campaign web pages. But the courts ordered an evidentiary hearing, and it never happened. Why didn't it happen? Because Louis Sines, the Cameron County prosecutor, who never really looked at the case until he was compelled to by the court to look at the evidence and put it on the table. And when he tried to do that, he realized that not only did they not have evidence of her guilt, they had evidence that would have acquitted her if she had had it at trial. And without getting too deep into it, because it makes me really mad to talk about this and to spell it out, but for more than 16 months, we've been waiting for the court to acknowledge, or rather, it took 16 months for from the time that Louis Sines signed the document with the defense attorneys, declaring that this conviction should be overturned and she should be free. And after that, Louis Sines is the hero in this case now, because he leaked that order or that motion to the media, and then they started taking off. And that was in May last year. It's now been over a year, and we're still waiting. And in any case, they basically sent their motion. Well, what happened was the judge had, you have to forgive my cloudy brain, I've been fasting for 4 days. When they released that order, it had not been signed for it by a judge. That's what they got tired of. It took a couple of weeks, but then the judge was changed, and it was changed to the judge who actually sentenced Melissa Lucio to death, and he signed that within 2 days. So now we have an order to vacate a death sentence signed by the prosecutor of the county and the judge who sentenced her to death, and still we're waiting for the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals to rule on this case. And what they should be ruling is to free Melissa Lucio. And that's why I just wanted to highlight that particular case. There's many others that we're working on, but you can find these campaigns at our webpage at deathpenaltyaction.org. That's also where you can go to make a donation to help us do this work and find a petition for every execution that is set. I wanted to just make sure you know that. With that, we're going to introduce our host for tonight, our MC, Julie Rinker, who has become a dear friend and a passionate activist on this and other issues. And she's bringing it all. Not only is she bringing herself and all that she's got in her head, but she's also bringing her baby and her husband and her parents to prop us all up. And they're wonderful. Here's John. Where's John? John was right behind us here. Dad. Oh, there he is. Yeah. He popped up. There it is. Anyway, welcome, Julie Rinker.
Thank you. Thank you. I'd also love to recognize that my student and her mother are here. Ariel and Marisol are here to learn because we shared what work we've been doing in Texas, and they said that sounds important. I want to learn more, and so it's been great to learn together this week. But I just want to thank you all for this time, and I want to give you a little bit of background. The reason that I'm here at all is because I had a great, wonderful teacher by chance, really. I received an email probably back in 2015 regarding a pilgrimage to Poland. And I said, Poland? I thought the Holocaust happened in Germany, you know? And so that really began my human rights journey, even though it took a couple of years for me to take that opportunity to attend that pilgrimage. And I just remember being in Auschwitz for the first time and just crying. Like that's when the floodgates opened for me after the number of places that we visited. And I was just like, what do I do? Like, how do you take on something like this and give it justice, you know, continue to give it justice? And that's when I just started learning about human rights. Unfortunately, I didn't have a human rights education in elementary school, middle school, high school, undergraduate degree, master's degree. I didn't study under Rick Halperin. It wasn't until that trip after graduation that I met him, and you know, he gave me the opportunity to audit his struggle for human rights course. I like to tell everybody that I can that that course has 16 textbooks. They're about this big, you know, 16 weeks in the class, and the course, you know, he expects you to read those. And it's been about 5, 6 years since I've started, and I think I'm through those. But if you get on his list, there'll never be an end to the books that he has you reading. So as his birthday gift to everybody here tonight, I have 5 or 6 book recommendations. I'm happy to email those if you don't have a pen and paper to write them down now. But yes, today is his birthday, as many of the friends here know. And so maybe as we ring the bell at the end, we can make a short birthday video for him as well. But one more thing I want to mention that brought me into this work is he was kind of a representative for the World Congress Against the Death Penalty. He brought a group of students to that event. And part of that event was creating a campaign in Texas to engage young people in the work of abolition. The story he tells is that at the previous convention, leadership looked around the room and said, what do you notice is similar here? And someone had stated, you know, we're all getting pretty old. We're not getting any younger. So we need to bring in younger people into this work so that it's not so exhausting for the people who've been doing it forever. And so I'm happy to, you know, bring young people, and, you know, the Amnesty group that's here, you're very welcome, and we need your help. And so, yeah, that would be my entrance into the work. Abe already mentioned Melissa Lucio. That was happening right as I was getting involved, I believe in 2021. And one more thing I'll mention now before I introduce my first speaker. I was a foster parent at the time that Melissa Lucio was, you know, kind of down to the wire with her execution date. And it was, you know, this young 14-year-old's first introduction to the death penalty, as well as we were showing up with banners in Texas. But, you know, she really resonated with the story of Melissa Lucio, and it, you know, it made an advocate out of her as well. So I think, you know, telling these stories to young people, helping them have access, you know, that's the case with so many students across the country, is they don't have access, maybe systematically, to this information. And so, yeah, I think we're already taking part in making sure that that's different, and I commend you all for it. Now I'd like to introduce our first speaker, who actually, as I understand it, just happened to walk by a couple of days ago. And some of us are here by chance like that, but we're very lucky to welcome Will McConnell. Will McConnell, I believe you live in Stockton, New Jersey, but you also spent time in DC with internships in Cambridge, Massachusetts, with schooling, and you've done a lot of really important work. So we're happy to have you share it now.
Great. Thank you, Julie. Thank you to the Death Penalty Action. The story is correct. So yesterday, I was walking by right here with a friend, and a gust of wind, horrendously strong gust of wind, starts picking up those tables, and they're about to flip, and everything's about to fly off. And I'm like, "Hey, can I help?" I talked to Amanda for a second, and we take the tables inside, and I find out this is a death penalty group. I talk about the work that I had done in the past that I'll talk to you guys about in a minute. And just Abe invited me to speak, and now here I am. So this is absolutely fortuitous. About 24 hours ago, I had no idea that this was happening, and here I am, and this is how. Exactly. So be careful where you stop. So my involvement with the death penalty dates to several years ago, but the story really starts in 1963. That is 30 years before I was born, in this building with the case Rudolph versus Alabama. Some of you might know that case. Rudolph Alabama versus Alabama was a case where a man was sentenced to death um, because of a rape. The man was a black man and the victim was a white woman. The case went through the court system. It arrived at the Supreme Court. There was a petition for certiorari. That means a petition from a lower court for the Supreme Court to review that case, and that petition was denied. But crucially, Justice Goldberg, joined by Justices Douglas and Brennan, wrote a dissent from the denial of the petitions to certiorari, where they said something is wrong with the death penalty in this case and with the death penalty in the United States. We do not know what happened in this case. We're not going to get the full briefing. The court is preventing us from reviewing this case. But we do know that at that time, in 1963, 89% of rape executions in the United States had a black defendant, even though more rape cases in the United States had white defendants. 89% had black defendants. 97% of those death sentences were given in states that belonged to the Confederacy. And in Alabama, the state where this case had developed, not a single white man had ever been sentenced to death for the rape of a black woman. Something clearly is wrong with this data. Something clearly is wrong. We do not have, as that building says, equal justice under the law if that's happening. And that is also a clear and obvious violation of the 14th Amendment of the United States. Now, that case was not lost, and a group of people from the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, an organization that had been founded at the time by Thurgood Marshall, who a few years after this would become a Supreme Court justice, and the NAACP Legal Defense Fund decided to start taking on more constitutional cases about the death penalty. Famously, they had Furman in 1972, which we celebrated a few days ago, and sadly, Furman was reversed by Greg v. Georgia, and the 49th anniversary of Greg v. Georgia is today. But they also did something else. They started putting together a registry of all death sentences in the United States. It was they called it a census. It was a document that just listed everyone who had been sentenced to death in every jurisdiction in the United States, or who was currently in death row at that time. They kept updating that document, but no one had ever developed a full database of death sentences that included more information that would be able to give us a better understanding of the death penalty in the United States. Now, come the year 2017, I am a guy, just fresh out of college. I'm working at the Department of State when the newly elected Trump administration charges my team with implementing the Muslim ban at the time. So I decide to quit my job, and I'm out of a job, and I have nothing going on. And so what am I going to do? I go on a website, the Death Penalty Information Center. I had just downloaded this data visualization tool that I thought was kind of cool. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to play with some of this data. And I realized only execution data and some other data is there, but there is no overall census of all death sentences. And so I start collecting that by looking at the LDF documents. So that is, and I have a team of several people, some that I know, some that I don't know, that helped me out with this project. And after about a year, with some work that continued after, we collected all of that information and developed this big database. And that was, for us, a turning point in the campaign against the death penalty, because for the first time, we were able to make really in-depth arguments about discrimination in the death penalty by looking at comprehensive data from across the United States. And here's what we found out. There have been roughly 10,000 death sentences in the United States since 1972. 1,500 of those have resulted in executions. 85% have not resulted in executions. They are this tremendous process that is cruel, is torturous, and frankly wastes us a lot of money that could be going to much better initiatives like Medicaid and some of the other things that are being cut right now across the street. Of those sentences, by and large, there is racial discrimination, both in who the sentenced folks are. 34% of people who receive death sentences are Black defendants. That is almost 3 times well, 2.5 times the share of the Black population in the United States. On the other hand, only 15% of cases that result in death sentences have a victim that is Black. That is a 20-point gap that is inexplicable and clearly the result of still existing discrimination. Geography plays an enormous role. 85% of counties in the United States have not handed out a death sentence in more than 45 years, and 2% of counties in the United States are responsible for more than half of all death sentences. The current death row population is 40% Black, even though the US population is about 13% Black, and discrimination is rampant across all other groups. If you're interested in more of the statistics, I just saw that at the end of that table, there's a couple of fact sheets that include this data that I worked on, so you can get more of that details and find out more at the Death Penalty Information Center. All of this information is extremely important because it will help us through the years build out cases on the 14th Amendment that show that the death penalty is cruel. It is cruel because it is cruel to sentence to death and execute a defendant that is equally situated as a different defendant, but is discriminated against because of their biographical information. And it is also unusual. It is strange that 2% of counties that are not responsible for most murders are responsible for most death sentences. And you can help in this process. If you quit your job like I did in 2017, or if you have the time in your hands, you can go on the Death Penalty Information Center website. All of this information is public. You can look at it. You can use the tools that have been set up on the websites. Start analyzing the data. Look at your home jurisdictions. Look at where you're from. Try to see if there's something wrong, if something does not look right to you. And if you find it, you're probably right. And tell someone. Let them know at the Death Penalty Information Center. Let the folks at the Death Penalty Action know. This is how those legal cases, I'm now a lawyer, this is how those legal cases are built. I was that random person 7 years ago. Anyone can be a part of this, and it can be extremely useful. Ultimately, and I'm sorry that I will have to run after this. I'm also across the park, working in the Hill today, working on climate and Medicaid issues. But I want to say that what is happening right now across the street is directly tied to what we're talking about here. Because if you do not invest in people when they're born, if you do not invest in their education, if you allow chronic disease to go rampant, if you do not invest in our future by investing in climate change prevention technologies, then we will have more poverty. We will have more people who grow up in families that are broken. We will have more people who will have to find money and work in areas that are outside of the law, and we will have more crime, and ultimately we will have more death sentences. If you are, as many of the people across the street claim to be pro-life just about one issue, then really you should look at the rest of life and all the way to the death penalty. And when it comes to us, and as Abe said, we'll probably be here next year, and I hope you all keep coming. I will keep coming, keep standing with us, keep fasting. I found out about this yesterday. I started fasting yesterday, so forgive my shaking, and keep fighting with us until the death penalty is in the past where it belongs. Thank you so much. I don't know who's speaking last.
Thank you, Will.
Of course.
We hope you'll come back at 11:15 for our closing circle if you still have energy. And if you're if you're still working at 11:15, come back at midnight. We have lots of food prepared for everybody. And so thank you. Actually, I want to carry on a little bit of what Will said. I was looking up our second speaker today, and I saw a quote that really resonated with me that the speaker said, and they said that because of his lived experiences working to address how disenfranchised will be tomorrow's prison victims. So just this idea of the people that are in front of us today need support, and if that support's not given, then we're looking at bigger problems down the line. I resonated with that as a literacy specialist. My background's in teaching reading to struggling readers. That's my future as well. And I think, I think Will's spot on. I think our next speaker's spot on. And I'd like to welcome Shujaa Graham. He began his journey in Lake Providence, Louisiana, continued to Los Angeles, and now lives in Maryland. And I noticed that he taught himself literacy skills, and I think that's really impressive and very difficult to do. So welcome, Shujaa.
Thank you. Before I begin, I want to do one thing. Every time I meet Mr. Pell, he always walk up to me and say, Shujaa Graham. He said, what would Martin do? What would Martin say in these instances? He said, tell me about Martin. I said, yeah, I just don't feel like it. But he'd always keep going. Until he get me to say something. And I would just break out. Every now and then, I feel discouraged. But this morning, the valley calls for me. So here I stand. Ladies and gentlemen who are here tonight, we must get ready to do our job so well that the living, the dead, or the unborn couldn't do it better. And when you leave here tonight, I want you to go out and do your job so well that the living, the dead, or the unborn couldn't do it better. But I want you to do one thing about the street sweeper, and that's the one that is always really hard for me, but I do try. When you leave here this afternoon, if it falls in your lot to be a street sweeper for this movement, I want you to go on out the streets like Michelangelo painted pictures, or Beethoven composed music, or Harry Tubman liberated slaves. I want you to sweep streets so well that all the hosts in heaven and on earth would have to pause and say, here lies a great street people who swept his job well. Thank you, Bill Pell. My friends who are here today, my name is Shujaa Graham. I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for the spirit of our youth. I'm so happy today to be here to see my friends who come all the way from Florida to visit us in Washington, D.C. in the hot and blistering sun. They remind me so much when I was fighting for my life. And some two little children came up to me in elementary and high school. They didn't know my name, but heard about my situation, and they came to my call. So I say today, I'm here not because of the system. I'm here today in spite of the system. It is people like you who organized and labored until I was free. I walked out of prison some 30-some years ago. I went in when I was a little boy, 19 years old, not really knowing anything political, but very militant. It was there in prison, a wonderful person I met. His name was Yasin Muhammad. And I met that man, and he gave me something that was so special. Meeting him was like I had been walking in blindness for so many years. He gave me knowledge. He told me about history, and I said, Mr. Muhammad, I didn't want to learn about history. He said there was nothing positive about people like me. He said, if you learn history, you're going to understand the present. I never looked back. I went off to prison to do my time, but I didn't want to do it like an ordinary prisoner. I joined the movement for social justice. And there in prison, I began to fight against racism and police brutality. It was there in 1973 when an uprising occurred in the institution that I was in, and I was accused of leading that uprising. And for the next 7 years of my life, I had to fight. My first trial ended in a hung jury. The jury couldn't determine my guilt or innocence. In my second trial, I was convicted and sentenced to die. And those young students that I told you about, they was the first to come up to visit me. They said, Shujaa Graham, we're going to get you out of here. I said, oh, my life is finished. I said, what can some young students do against the power of the state of California? Little did I know. Sitting in Brian went off with Sam Brooks, the elder man, and began to organize like never before, talking about our situation. And after 3.5 years on California's death row, my case was overturned because they systematically excluded all African Americans off the jury. You would think because the court declared that it was unconstitutional for them to exclude all African Americans off the jury, that this trial would be different. My friend, my third trial was all white. In my third trial, again, the jury couldn't determine my guilt and innocence. I had become older then. I was 30 years old. 11 years had passed, and I couldn't conceive of the life for me. If I had to go back to prison, how would I start all over again? But I was fortunate. We went to a fourth trial. We thought at first they wasn't going to try us again, but they tried us. And it was there in that fourth trial. We tried to get people of color on our jury, but we failed miserably because the prosecutor then, again, systematically excluded all African Americans off the jury. So we were stuck with all white, but we were fortunate. I remember going through the jury and picking a jury. There was one particular man my lawyer didn't like, but I kind of liked him. I felt a certain connection with him. And I remember telling Mr. Larson, I said, Mr. Larson, because Mr. Larson wanted to get him off the jury because he felt that he was too conservative. I said, Mr. Larson, I can't give you a deep philosophical explanation on why I want him on the jury, other than the fact that I think he's a decent man. And I said, that's all I want on the jury. He said, all right, sweetheart, he's going to convict you. Well, anyway, the long story short, we left him on the jury. He became the jury foreman, and he led the campaign for my release. And I can remember them telling us the jury had a verdict, and I remember they saying our jury was very sophisticated. So when they said a verdict, they got a verdict on one and not on the other, but they had a verdict on both of them. And I can remember standing up, 31 years old after 11 long years, and I was the first one. I was the second one when we went to the Death House, but I was the first one to stand up. And I can remember them saying, the jury said not guilty. I can remember putting my hands down on my face. I said, after 11 long years, my greatest nightmare has finally come to an end. My friends, my abolitionist friends, comrades and brothers, I've been out over 35 years, and I still suffer consequences of racism that exists in America, and it exists more and more each and every day. I take a stand against racism and all the brutality, all the sexism, all the anti-gay activity. I'm not just a prisoner, an abolitionist. I'm a human rights activist. I fight for social justice. As Dr. King would say, skin may differ, but affection dwell in white and black and gay the same. If we were so tall to reach the pole or grasp the ocean that is span, we still must be judged by our character and not by our preference. And this is where I stand today in my action. And I ask each and every one of you all to keep the faith, because we have made great progress in our movement, and we have a long ways to go. But I can guarantee you, never give up on America. We're going to make America what she ought to be. At one time, I gave up, but I refuse to believe, as Dr. King would say, I refuse to believe that America is so tragically bound to the all this midnight of racism and capital punishment, that she can't see a better day when abolition will become a reality for all the people in the world. I live for a day to see the historian write that marvelous chapter. I live the day when some little children walk up to me and say, Shujaa Graham, what was capital punishment? And I can look down on that kid and say, it is a thing of the past. Our nation have evolved. And when America evolved as a nation, the world began to evolve as a more peaceful. And so I leave you all today. I just want to leave you with the words. You know, I don't do too good anymore. You know, my wife, she's suffering now with dementia. For 30 years, we did everything together. Never had a disagreement politically other than how to do it. I had a wonderful life and woke up this one morning, she didn't even know my name. For 30 years, we did everything together. Now she's on her own journey, and I'm not included. All I can do is be there to help her. And it's been an honor to take care of that soldier. I'm tricking myself that I can't go to the battlefield like I used to. So I'm put in my mind, I'm a doctor now. I'm serving a patient that was on the battlefield. She can't go no more, so I have to stay back. So I'm staying back a lot that I can't travel like I used to unless it's local. But I rest assured, my friend, for the race is not necessarily given to the swift or the strong, but to the ones who endure to the end. And to my beloved friend, remember this, I am with you and you are with me. Two mountains that are far apart would never meet, but are dedicated people who are struggling for the same distinct will. I'll see you then. God bless you all. Journey of hope today, journey of hope tomorrow, journey of hope forever. Long live Bill Pelkey.
Thank you.
Thank you, brother. Thank you, brother. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Shujaa. Before I jump into our next speaker, I want to just continue to highlight this message that Shujaa so eloquently put for us. It's bigger than the death penalty. It's human rights work. It's education. It's love. It's conversations. And I'm learning that in interactions with everybody here. We're living that out with each other, and it's a gift.
To follow that.
I would love to take a moment to share my family's story. I haven't shared this properly, but in conversations with people who have walked by, I've had the opportunity over the years. So I'd love to give it another go here. When I was about 8 years old, the way I remember it is my family received a phone call that let us know that our aunt, my mom's sister, had been killed. And I remember the circumstances of it coming out little by little. Her home was burned down or attempted to be burned down in the killing. And she, had her credit cards taken by this individual. And this happened in Victorville, California. This is an aunt that I grew up with, going to visit, as you can imagine, growing up with her kids. It was at a time in the early 2000s when a number of individuals were being put on death row in California for similar crimes, a murder plus additional crimes involved with the murder. But this individual chose to admit their part in it from an early time. So the death penalty was never on the table for this individual. We've been able to follow up with this individual who committed this crime against my aunt over the years, and we've seen this person live a new life. This person has recognized their wrong. This person has served their time. This person is not who they were at age 18 when this crime happened. I don't think every person gets the opportunity to see the change of a life, but if you can see the change of a life, it's powerful. Not every person who commits horrible crimes against people will change. Maybe not every person will be safe to be released, but the person who killed my aunt is released today. He is living a new life. He's starting over. And some people would say that we'll never have my aunt back. So why should this person have their opportunity to live a new life, to start over, to have dreams? But the way I see it is we're all more than the worst thing that we've ever done. And we should have the opportunity to invest in that if we choose. I think I'm a little lucky, as has been mentioned here tonight. The death penalty comes down to where the crime occurred. The crime occurred in a zip code that chose not to pursue the death penalty, whether it was because he admitted guilt, whether it was because he was a white man, whatever the reason that he did not die for his crime. He hopefully will be here one day to share with you. The reason that I have this information on this individual is it was her son, my cousin. He committed the crime against his mother, and he's a different person today. And I hope he can come here. My cousin Josh can come here and share his story with all of you of how he had the opportunity to change. And really, as you know, we're all on the same page here, but it's all of our stories that count in changing hearts and changing minds. And so I thank you for all of those of you who continue to do the work of sharing your stories and showing up. And so now, with that story of mine, I would love to introduce our next speaker. I had the pleasure of meeting this speaker virtually, as many of us meet last year. We were having a planning meeting for another trip to Poland with Dr. Rick Halperin. Promise me the first time you go, you're just scratching the surface. But I had the opportunity to return, and I met our next speaker, who has spent most of her time on the East Coast, Pennsylvania, New Jersey. She's a mitigation specialist who's been working with the court, and she's also done a lot of work with Amnesty International. So one quick story I'd like to share about Phil before she comes up. She just shared this with me yesterday, but she wasn't able to attend the first meeting of the Fast and Vigil 32 years ago, but on the second trip, Bill Pelkey and Rick Halperin were driving down from an event, and at some point there was a phone call made, and she said, "Why don't you pick me up?" And she joined at that point, and she's been here many times since, and I've been very, very privileged to be able to learn from her both in Poland and as we've been here, and I hope we all take something away. But please welcome Phil Pautrat.
I'm so glad we got to meet. Ooh, that's fun. Where am I in the right spot? Okay. I'm going to talk about what mitigation is, but I absolutely do not want to bore everybody because it's legal stuff, and I'm not a lawyer. But before I do anything and speak about anything, I'm going to do what I always do when I'm called on to speak. I am a first-generation U.S. citizen. My dad was a refugee, child refugee, and he came to the U.S. Via Cuba from Soviet-controlled Ukraine, and got here when he was about 14. 2 years before that, when my family was trying to get out in Ukraine, they were running because they were Jews, and the U.S. quota for Jews was not allowing people in the year that my dad but eventually went through Cuba and became a Cuban citizen. So in some ways, I'm also the daughter of a Cuban citizen. But I thank him for everything that I do and everything that I believe, because I was raised by somebody who could have been a really angry person. He could have hated. And in my life, I lost him when I was 28. I have no recollection of any time that he said, this person, that person of color, that religion, anything, anybody was somebody that we shouldn't care about. And so I always I guess it's sort of like my version of a prayer to give all the credit that I do to my father and who he raised me to be. He was in front of the firing squad when he was 12 and escaped because somebody had come in and stopped killing that group of Jews, and they hid in a cornfield and got away. So, okay. Thanks, Dad. Quite a way back, I had joined Amnesty International, and I became the SDPAC, the State Death Penalty Coordinator for Pennsylvania, and ultimately for the Mid-Atlantic region. And I was in grad school for social work, and I was doing a lot of volunteer work for Rob Dunham. If you were here a few days ago, you heard and met Rob. Rob is my hero. I was volunteering in his office in Philadelphia in the Capitol Habeas Unit, and going through, at the time I was studying clinical social work, and going through letters, documents for somebody who was on the row in Pennsylvania. And I spent a long time doing that as a volunteer, and got to meet and learn a lot of things from the capital defense attorneys. And I got a call from Rob one day, and he said, "You want to do a mitigation case?" And I said, "I'm not a mitigation specialist. I'm studying clinical social work." He said, "What do you think you've been doing in this office for, ever since you've been coming by and helping us out? You've been going through mental health records. You've been going through school records." And he says, "So you want to take on, an actual case?" This was 1994-ish. So I said, "Yeah, but you better tell the defense attorney who, is looking for mitigation specialists that I'm not a professional." I said, "If it's okay with them, yeah, I'd love to do that and learn." So I got appointed to my first mitigation case in roughly 1994, and I became full-time a clinical social worker. I have my own private practice, and I specialize in trauma. I'm doing trauma-informed care. And at the same time, I'm still working with Amnesty International. I'm cycling off the board in September, and I'm going to go back to doing primarily anti-death penalty work. I never stop, but I'm going to hopefully do a little bit more. But okay, what's mitigation? How many people, if you've ever, been out wherever you're at speaking about that person, they killed somebody, and even if the death penalty isn't part of the issue, and they go, "Well, they came from a well-off family, so why in the world would they get involved? Why would they do drugs? Why would they get involved in robbing a store? Why did they get into, an abuse issue? They came from a well-off family. They didn't live in that neighborhood. They're not that color." And, people would say to me, "Why do you care about those people?" Okay, so my job and what mitigation is, and I've broken it down when I do speak about it, is that it's how does somebody, whoever it is that's facing serious criminal charges, goes from point A in their life to point B in their life where they might have committed this crime. So how do we figure that out? How do we answer that? Okay, and when it comes down to being in the court, the trials are what's called bifurcated trials. You have the what Shujaa kind of touched on. You have the guilt phase. I hate it being called that, but it's the guilt phase. And then if somebody is convicted of first-degree murder and the death penalty is being sought, you go to a sentencing hearing. And in most cases, the outcome is the jury will have to be determining whether a death sentence is going to be voted on, or in most cases, it's life without possibility of parole. So what do I do? Okay, what did I learn from Rob and the other attorneys that I've worked along the years? And I've been doing this part-time as a consultant since then, taking a few cases a year and having my practice, in social work and psychotherapy. We look at mental health records. Well, let me step back 1 second. First thing I do is I go out and I interview the person who's being facing a possible death sentence, and I get to know them. I do what I call the longest and biggest and most intensive intake, and I go back not just where they were at the time of the crime, not what was their life like, as an adult. We go back as far as we can. We look at school records, we look at possible mental health records, we look at physical health history. We look at, family members who are significant who might be a potential witness. Sometimes their family member will be a hostile witness. They might be somebody who totally, beat this person, and and when they were growing up, and we're going to put them on the stand and get them to tell what this usually male is dealt with growing up, why he ran away from home at 16, et cetera, et cetera. And when we can, we go back to the pregnancy of the mother. We look at whether they fell down the steps. We look at whether they were abused, whether they had mental health issues, and we go back as many generations as is possible. And we build a life history, which explains point A to point B. And I want to take just a very short amount of time to tell a hopeful kind of outcome. In 2003, a young man named Dominic in Philadelphia, at 17 years old, along with his 16-year-old brother, another 16-year-old friend, and a 15-year-old girl, were convicted of first-degree murder for the death of their friend, who they robbed and beat for drug money. So I was called on to work on that case, and we got to trial, and the DA decided that they would only go for death for the 17-year-old, and I was appointed in his case. And I got to know him really well, because it takes a couple of years to get to trial. And I spent an awful lot of time at the prison. We sat together in the prison library, and he told me his story. Now, at that point, he's no longer doing drugs. By that time, 2 years to the trial, he's got his GED, and I am not exaggerating, he was reading Plato, which really embarrassed me. So I got to know him really well. I got to know him point A to point B, why he was in that situation, why somebody died, and why the death penalty was being sought. 2005, I want to speed this up because it's a long story, and I'm going to tell it as quickly as I can. 2005, we were in the court. The jury already convicted him of the first degree capital murder. And I get a note from a member of the media who passes it to me, and I see Simmons versus Georgia was just passed, ending death penalty for juvenile offenders. Woo! We pass it up through the bailiff. We pass it up to the judge, who goes, recess. And I packed up, speeding up, I packed up my stuff, all the mitigation I had that I worked on for 2 years with Dominic, and having found his mother who disappeared when he was 6, et cetera, et cetera. And I packed it up, and Dominic was sentenced to life without possibility of parole, plus 22 and a half and 45 years. Fast forward, okay, I stayed in touch with him. He was a very bright and very remorseful, which he didn't hesitate to tell me, waking up every day what he had to live with, and never asking for. The only thing he ever asked me for, people say, oh, inmates, you get friendly with them and they ask you for money. Oh, the only thing he wanted from me was a picture of my cat, because he was a cat lover. So I did that. I sent him a picture of my cat. And anyway, fast forward to 2012 and 2016, Supreme Court rules no life without possibility of parole for juvenile offenders. I immediately wrote to Dominic and I said, call me. I've got your mitigation. You're going to have a sentencing hearing. And the only thing I'm going to need from you, and most of these things, the documents that I have, are all the certificates that you've been awarded in the 20 some years that you've been in prison, and the fact that that the social work in the prison knows that you've literally never had a write up. And fast forwarding that, we had the hearing just maybe 2 years ago, and the DA, and as much as we love him, he offered Dominic 35 years to life. And Dominic said, I'll take 25 to life, and we held a hearing. And Dominic was sentenced to 25 to life, and in 2.5 years, this now 40-year-old will be eligible for a sentencing hearing. And I've got his good prisoner record, and I've got all the old mitigation, and we're going to put on a hell of a parole hearing. And then he and I, and probably my husband, are going to go out and have an incredible dinner. So just to wrap up, I just want to say, before Abe yells at me, is that the reason I'm telling this story is because one of the things I said to Dominic all those years, and I've written to other people on the row, etc., but he and I, it's almost like like a son. Don't ever give up hope. You're doing a good job as a lifer. You did a good job while you were waiting trial, and you're doing a good job now, 20 plus years. And one of these days, he said, yeah, you'll see me on Facebook. So thank you all. What? Oh, he'll be here. He'll go anywhere I tell him. Okay, thanks.
Woo. Thank you, Bill. Okay, we're almost halfway through our speakers. We've had a wonderful lineup so far. I was asked to do this by Abe a little while ago, and he gave me more directions, and he said, I want you to share what motivates you. What motivates you to do this work here today? I've shared a little bit of my family story, and I just want to share a moment briefly about my college experience. I went to a Christian college. I became a Christian in high school. I would say my family was somewhat Christian, and it became personal for me when I was in high school, and I decided to pursue that in college. Going into college, I expected to study law, but perhaps as a first-generation college student, when I got there, I was just like, wow, where did I think I could do that? You know, it was just a lot harder than I anticipated, and I very quickly changed my life goal into predominantly choosing to be an at-home mom, which is valuable and important and good, but not what I went there to do. And so I just say that briefly because I did an internship here, and part of the preparation for the internship from this Christian college that I went to was to discuss the ways that Christian students kind of have an upper hand, because you're not drinking alcohol in this internship, and you're not doing these things that other students are doing. This will help you get ahead. And it kind of felt like what's called I forget the term, the unspoken curriculum, the unwritten curriculum, like tips of the trade for people who have been doing this before you. Anyway, I just, over the years since graduating and looking back on that dream that I chose not to pursue, like I think some element of it was wrapped up in the Christianity experience. And I thought that leadership was more of a male thing. Like I thought that there was something that made men more ready to take on these roles. And so part of me even speaking here today, it's not something that I would pursue for myself, but I'm motivated to do so because I think that men and women together, we share a more full, complete story of what we're seeing and what we're experiencing. So I just encourage all the women that are here, the young women especially, not to ever hesitate on your own leadership, because you see men who maybe do it more naturally or who more are receiving praise for how they're doing it. I think we all have a story to tell, and I think take every opportunity. And actually, our next speaker, moving into our next speaker, came from Salt Lake City, Utah, and he's been here a number of times since 2012. In talking with him, he's mentioned how proud he is of his daughter, and also how proud he is of his brother. And I'd love to welcome up now Randy Garnder.
Yeah, Red. Yeah. course, I'm pretty nervous. I always am. But my name's Randy, and I'm an alcoholic. Oh shit, wrong meeting. Oh, oh, I got to laugh. Thank you. Actually, my name's Randy Garnder. I'm from Salt Lake City, Utah. 15 years ago on June 18th, 2010, my little brother, Ronnie Lee Gardner, was executed in the state of Utah by a firing squad. So that's how I got involved with coming to these events, and it's changed totally changed my life. About a week after my brother was executed, I was lost. I didn't have no one to talk to. My family didn't really want to talk about it anymore. You know, we dealt with this for 25 years, and it finally happened. But so I got on the internet and Googled anti-death penalty activists. I thought they were a bunch of hippies like Ron and a few others, these long-haired hippie types. So that's who I thought was out there in the world fighting against the death penalty. I knew my brother was guilty, and you know, he knew he was guilty. It wasn't an innocent factor at all. But anyway, I wanted to talk to. I reached out to Bill Pelkey. It was a Journey of Hope from Violence to Healing. I'm sorry, and he answered the phone, and it's like, wow, that's weird. And then he goes, "How would you like to?" He talked for a couple hours. Seriously, he goes, "How would you like to go to Texas for an event?" And I said, "That's kind of weird. You don't even know me." I did tell him I had free flight benefits. I think that helped a little bit. But so I went, and that was within a month of my brother being executed. So the first people I meet is 4 people that said they were exonerated from death row. And I thought, what the F, you know? You're guilty if you're on death row. You're guilty, and you're not innocent. But I got to know these guys. Matter of fact, Shujaa was one of those men that I met, and what that created in me was a fighter against the death penalty, meeting these people. And I was on the board of Hope, or Journey of Hope from Violence to Healing, for 8 years. Got a little too much. I didn't get the forgiveness factor like I was supposed to, I think. Bill Pelkey kept telling me, hang out with SueZann Bosler, hang out with Shujaa, hang out with all these people, Marietta Yeager and Bill. And it's like, I'm not getting it. I'm kind of being a hypocrite. I'm out here talking. I'm not walking the walk. But 8 years later, right before I resigned, actually, I woke up one morning and realized that I did have forgiveness in my heart and true forgiveness. I pictured myself giving the executioners, which there was 5 shooters of my brother, and 4 of them had live rounds, but I'm giving those guys a hug and saying, sincere hug, I'm sorry you had to be involved in something like this, even though they volunteered. There were 200 volunteers that volunteered for it. I still forgave them, and I couldn't up to that point. Another thing I wanted to talk a little bit about was the collateral damage. People call, oh, you're a victim, victim. Well, I am a victim of state-sanctioned murders. I quit using victim because they're all poor, pitiful me. Your brother killed somebody, and now you're a victim to something. No, maybe you should have been a bigger brother or something, or a better brother. And it's like, so I just kind of coined it collateral damage. But one of the things that I remember during this time is having nightmares, and they started pretty rapidly after. The nightmares were, horrific. Nobody wants to have nightmares of me executing my mother, her sitting in her wheelchair and saying, why, Randy, why? As I shoot her, and it's slow motion bullets going towards my mom and hits her in the chest, and blood goes all over, and I see the look in her eye, or my kids executing me, or me executing my 5 kids. I've gone through my whole family, the same thing, same dreams, and it went on for years, 8 years to be exact. I finally reached out to a therapist. I'm not that tough guy I thought I was. I needed something more than the Journey of Hope, more than the anti-abolition movement. I needed to quit having these dreams. So I did find a therapist, and I worked with for about 3 years. And I don't today have those dreams no more. And that was the hardest part of me, just dreaming about it. And they're so real. And even in my dreams, most of the time, I knew it wasn't really happening. It scares the shit out of you, really. And I know other people, executioners and jury. I even knew a juror one time that they found the guy guilty, and he didn't get the death sentence, but down the road he was exonerated. And she goes, what if he would have got the death penalty? She was a holdout, so didn't give the death sentence. But what if we were? She goes, then that would have happened to him. But those kind of dreams, they make you go crazy. Today I'm better. By the way, I really am sober. I really am a drug addict and an alcoholic, but recovering. I have almost 2 years. And one last thing, I usually bring my brother with me. I have Zern. I like to spread his ashes wherever I go because I wouldn't be here without him. It never would have happened. And he actually had a fire. I have some property out in the middle of the desert in Utah, and I had his urn up there, and I take it everywhere I go. And the bottle was always full, just like this. Different bottle had a hummingbird on it. And the day before it burned at the fire at my place, it was still a full bottle of his ashes. I never did get that. I spread them out all over, but it always stayed full. And I think there's some meaning to that. This one's actually going a lot faster than the other one, so maybe I'm getting more, but I like to share them with the. Yeah, I want to thank everybody for coming out. I'll cut this short. If it wasn't for you people, and you guys keep me going. This is a family, and a lot of the time, especially at these events, this is closer than my real family. And I have 5 kids, and we're close. But I just love you guys all, and it's so good to see everybody, and I appreciate everybody. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing, Randy. Thank you for being here over all these years and sharing your story and carrying your brother's life with us. It's a gift for all of us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is from Fairfax, Virginia. And I don't want to share her story, but I promise it's a good one. And I came across Bill Pelkey's blog today that he ran for a number of years, a decade. And in that blog, I saw this quote about Terri. She wrote, "I had to open every door that came my way." And you're still here opening those doors and taking every opportunity to share your story. And I hope to do the same. So help me with welcoming up Terri Steinberg.
Good evening, everybody. I want to thank you all for being here to listen to these sacred stories in this sacred space. I hope that you online and you here have heard something that's touched you and encouraged you to go out and do something for someone else. We shared space this week on Moral Monday with the group protesting that big bill that unfortunately got passed. So we have some fighting to do because we got to make sure it doesn't go through the next step. And all I could think about, the bill that was supposed to take away Medicaid and SNAP, and things that help those who need it the most. And all I was thinking about was the money that the state of Virginia spent trying to kill my son could have saved those programs alone. And if we could just get rid of the death penalty, there would be no need to cancel those programs because the money would be there. When I came in this week, I was really, I was broken. There's some stuff going on in my son's case, and I'll get into that in a second. But I didn't think I was going to be able to do this tonight. And I may not do it so well, might be a little soggy, but I wanted to thank Gary for seeing me where I was and talking to me and giving me the courage to try and do this tonight. I knew we had a death penalty in this country. I just never understood it. It didn't make sense to me that we would take a person who had been rendered helpless and locked in a box and walk them down the hall and strap them to a gurney and pump them with poison to kill them on purpose. But I didn't do anything about it. I have 4 children. I was a very busy mom. I drove a minivan, coached cheerleading. We were a busy household. All my kids were involved in sports. So I didn't have time to think about the death penalty. I didn't have time to do anything about it. But one day the death penalty came into my home and threatened the life of my oldest child and changed the rest of our lives forever. My oldest child, Justin, it was 2 days before his 20th birthday when a young man named Danny Petroli was shot and killed by another young man named Owen Barber. There was never any question as to whether or not Owen pulled the trigger. But Danny, who had been bringing in, selling drugs and bringing in $500,000 worth of drugs into the county every month, was the son of a Secret Service agent. And because he was the son of a Secret Service agent, they wanted the ultimate punishment for the loss of that young man. And since Owen's crime was not a capital crime, Owen was told when he was arrested that if he was to blame this on my son, Justin Wolf, and say that Justin asked him to commit this murder, that he himself would not go to death row. My children at the time, Justin was about to turn 20, Wes was 18. I'm sure many of you know what that stage of life is like, where you're trying to make plans for your future. What are you going to do? Where are you going to go to college? Imagine trying to make those decisions when the state that you live in is threatening the big brother that you love and adore, who taught you how to play basketball and helped walk you to school in the morning so mom could get to work. Christina was 15. She was head of the cheerleading squad. Her 4 years of high school should have been paved with fun and friends and laughter. But instead, she had to put on a fake smile and step across the newspaper on the front porch of the schoolyard, the school door, go to her classes, cheer at her games, when inside she was broken. She was hurting, knowing that the brother who, when she couldn't decide whether to ask her father or her stepdad to take her to the father-daughter dance in Girl Scouts, Justin, at the age of 15, said, "I'll do it." Not many 15-year-old boys would go to a Girl Scout dance, but he did. So imagine how it was for her. And then the youngest was 4. How do you tell a 4-year-old about the death penalty? How do you tell a little girl that the brother that she loves, who used to watch Disney movies with her and buy her Nike tennis shoes so she could run fast, how do you tell that little girl that the state we live in is going to kill her brother? And there's nothing that your mama can do to stop it. We went to trial in January of 2002. Justin turned himself in May of 2001. I remember when he called me when he went to turn himself in, he said, "Mom, I'm turning myself in. They think I had something to do with Danny's death. Now I might have to do some time because I've been selling marijuana, but it was just marijuana. It's my first offense. I should be home in a few days. Please don't worry." I collapsed to the floor. Part of me, though, was so proud of him for accepting responsibility for what he was doing and willing to step forward. He said, "Mom, I got to clear my name." It was important to him. So he turned himself in, and the next thing we know, this case spiraled out of control, and he was facing a death sentence. Went to trial in January of 2002, and the crime happened in 2001. Went to trial, lasted 3 weeks. There were a lot of kids who testified against Justin because they were trying to keep their charges down. Justin actually testified for himself because he said, "Mom, the truth will set me free." We believed in the system. We had no idea how broken, how badly broken the system is. So though I was proud of him, I was still scared. I remember I couldn't go out of the house for weeks. I remember crying all the time, crying myself to sleep every night. It's pretty hard on my poor husband. There was nothing he could do to help me feel better. We were afraid for my son's life. Anyway, after 3 weeks of trial and testimony, the jury deliberated for only 1 hour and came back with a verdict of guilty. My oldest two, or my middle two, Wes and Tina, they had come to trial with me for many, many of the days that we were there. And I remember trying to coach them before we went back the next day to see whether or not their brother was going to get life in prison or death for a crime he didn't commit. And the words that I said to them, which I couldn't believe they were coming out of my mouth, but it was the best I could do at the time. I said, we believe that all life is sacred. And there are a lot of people out there that believe the same. I'm afraid that if he gets a life sentence, nobody's going to care that he's gone to jail for the rest of his life for a crime he didn't commit. But if he gets the death penalty, like that was a better option, we can get people to fight for him and we'll get him home. But unfortunately, the next day, the jury came back with a verdict of guilty. They sentenced him to 3 years for a gun he never touched, 30 years for selling marijuana, his first offense, and death for murder for hire, a crime he didn't commit. 2 days later, I was desperate for help. I needed somebody to help me save my son, tell me what to do. And I had heard about this group protesting the death penalty in front of the Supreme Court. And by the grace of God, I found my way into DC, not my strong suit. And I found a parking place, another miracle. Right down there. It might have been illegal, come to think of it. But anyway, I came up here with this picture of my son. And I said, somebody help me. They want to kill my son. Does he look like a monster to you? When you're in trial, that's what they call him. Every person convicted of or being tried for murder is a monster. They're not fit to live. And I'm sitting here thinking, I'm sitting in this courtroom, you're talking about my kid. I said, does he look like a monster to you? And that's where I met Bill Pelkey, Abe Bonowitz, SueZann Bosler, Shujaa Graham. And they gave me the hope. Shujaa gave me hope that one day my son too could walk free. Bill took me in as family, and he helped me to feel normal. So I've learned that normal is just a setting on the washing machine. And it gave me the opportunity to share my son's story and talk about the collateral damage, as Randy said, of the death penalty. Me and my family are the collateral damage of the death penalty. Thankfully, my son's case was vacated in 2012, and he's no longer on death row. We're still fighting to bring him home. But if they had killed my son, it would have been his brothers and sisters and I who would have continued to suffer. Justin would have been out of the box. He would have been free. But we would have been the ones to still continue to carry the burden of him not being here and having had to witness the execution and not be able to stop it. I've looked in the eyes of many men who were on death row while he was there, and I don't see the same person who committed whatever horrendous crime they were accused of and executed for. I talked to a few of them before they were executed. Their concern was not themselves, but for me and for my son and for those they were leaving behind. And they always promised some kind of sign to let you know they were still with you. So in 2005, Justin had gotten his first execution date. There was a young man who had heard that he was going to be executed, who happened to have once been Owen's cellmate. He wrote to our attorneys and said, I need to see you. There's a man's life at stake. And he told our attorneys that over the course of living with Owen in that cell, he had been asked to try and appeal Owen's sentence. It wasn't death, but it was longer than Owen had hoped it would be. And he said, clearly, Owen had said Justin had nothing to do with it. So after our attorneys met with him, they said, write down what you know. He wrote out this long document about what Owen had told him over the course of living together and filing his paperwork. And then they went and met with Owen. They pulled him out of his cell and they said, Owen, Carl says you're lying. And Owen said, you're right, I am. And he says, write down what happened. And he wrote the same story that Carl had written. They're not in the same prison anymore. They weren't in the same, they're not allowed to make phone calls, but somehow their stories matched. I believe it's because it was true. They called Justin up and they said, this is what information we've gotten. And it was right around Christmas time, and Justin said, it's the best Christmas present my mom could ask for. That was in 2005. We didn't finally make it to the federal court till 2012, where we actually were able to put on evidence which would have kept the jury from convicting him. And it was a piece of paper written by the officer that arrested Owen that he wrote out in his own handwriting. I told Owen Barber that if he put this on Justin Wolf, he would not get the death penalty. Had any jury seen that note from the beginning, I would never have met any of you. The prosecutor admitted to withholding evidence. He admitted to putting witnesses together the night before they were to testify in order for them to get their story straight. The judge was furious. At the end of the hearing, he asked the prosecutor, he says, "Is this how you normally conduct your business?" And he said, "Sometimes I have to. Otherwise, the defendant will fabricate a defense." The judge threw his pen across the room. Anyway, it still took a long time. The court does not care how long you have to wait for these answers. But about, it was almost a year later, I guess, he vacated my son's sentence, which meant he wiped it clean, but they were told release or retry him in 120 days. They transferred my son into solitary confinement from the solitary confinement on death row, which is a little different because even though you're in solitary, those men on death row, those worst of the worst, the ones who aren't fit to live, take care of each other. They have a bond, they have a friendship, and they look after each other. So it's very different. So now he's in solitary and can't talk to anybody because someone else is going to rat on him to lessen their charges. So after 5,000 days of solitary confinement, a hearing that after 4 years hadn't happened, this speedy trial he was supposed to get, Justin was starting to feel the effects of solitary confinement, and they convinced him to take a plea. The only plea that they would accept was for him to admit guilt. So for 15 years, he told the same story, professed his innocence, and no one would believe him. But one day they say, accept guilt, and they take it as truth. They told him they would probably only sentence him to 10 more years. He'd already been serving 13 at that time. And he said he felt that he wasn't ever going to get home. And it took 10 years for his case to be vacated. So he felt like not going back to death row, where his best friend was the next to be executed. It was a better idea to accept the deal and go to general population where he could finally hug his nieces and nephews and his mom, and be, get an education so that when he did come home, he'd be able to do something worthwhile. So they sent him to general population. He's been an honor prisoner. He works, he has a job, he's taking classes. He got his HVAC license, and recently he was trying to bring to light. He had told me about the conditions in the restricted housing unit. So when you get in trouble, you go to RHU. They say there's no, solitary confinement anymore, but they call it RHU, which is restrictive housing, which is the same thing as solitary confinement. Anyway, he was trying to tell me about the conditions there, how there was no exhaust fan and it was just miserable. And they got upset with him. So he was getting ready to be transferred out from a level 3 facility to a level 2, which is what he classified as, which meant he needed less security. But because he was trying to show everybody how bad it was, the conditions were, and try and make change, they shipped him out. And last Wednesday, he ended up right back on death row in the same pod where he started. Virginia, thank God, no longer has a death penalty, so he is not under sentence of death, but the conditions are horrific. And I know they did this to punish him. So when I got here this week, I had just heard about where he was, and it does kind of mess with the head a little bit. And we're fighting to get him home. The good news is we had a hearing in May. The judges that had helped overturn his case before were the ones we were put in front of. And we were so lucky. I couldn't believe it. One of the judges actually dissented the order to release or retry him and said, he's never going to get fair trial in that county. We should just let him go. And so now we are again in front of her. And she's saying things that my lawyer should have been saying, but he wasn't, because the issue was whether or not he deserved a hearing because the papers were filed a day late. And unfortunately, if they're filed a day late, they can say, forget it, you're done. But if you're innocent, if there's evidence of innocence, they will allow you to present the case, even though you're late. So our lawyer was just trying to say, you know, this is what evidence I have, and this is why we have it. And the judge is feeding him all this stuff. And at one point, she even said, just say yes, it'll help your case. So she was obviously upset because she said it was going to be not a fair trial if you went back there, and all the stuff they've done since then. It's just unbelievable. I mean, I couldn't make it up. Anyway, there is hope. But I will say, you know, I think of Danny's family often, and I know they have an empty seat at the table. And I promise you, so do we. Every holiday, every birthday, everything that goes good in our lives is always overshadowed by the fact that Justin isn't with us, and he should be, and he deserves to be. We've been fighting this for 24 years. This mama's getting tired, and I just want him to come home. But there's no giving up. And I've learned that, you know, you can either live in the darkness that you've had to endure, or you become the light that you survived it. And I hope to be a light and inspire others to keep fighting. I am so grateful for this community who has given my pain a purpose. I tell my story in the hopes that I can open minds and change hearts about the death penalty. We are the collateral damage of the death penalty. Mitigation specialists are the net collateral damage. Lawyers who fight for their people, ministers, people who walk them to the door of the death house. The damage that inflicts on other people. In medical field, we take an oath to first do no harm. Maybe every occupation should take that same oath. And the death penalty, it does a lot of harm. The sun wasn't any brighter the day after Moy was executed. The sun doesn't shine any brighter the day after anyone is executed. All it does is bring pain to those who are left behind. And I think about Danny's family, and I think about how the prosecutors fed them this lie that executing my son was going to make them feel better. It was never going to bring Danny back. And all it's done is torture them, because every time we get a win, it hurts them. They waited for 16 years for my son to be executed. And when he finally took the plea deal, they didn't get what they had wanted. And I feel like that brought them more pain than necessary. If it wasn't on the table, Owen would never have lied. Owen would have walked out of the courthouse doors into prison, and that family could have started to heal. There is no healing in wanting to hurt another person. So I appreciate you all for everything that you've given to my life, meeting you here in 2003. Actually, it was 2002 when I met you, and then Bill called me too, Randy. Got that, hey, how about you go to Ohio with us? And I'm thinking, what? I don't know you. I don't even know if I remember what you look like at that point. But I knew that I had to go through every door and try and save my son's life. I know that had I not walked through those doors, my son would not be with us, because I wouldn't have known where to begin or how to help. So I thank all of you. I encourage all of you to keep up the fight, take care of each other, because we have a lot of work to do, and we can't afford to lose any more people. And those of you who are watching, I also hope that by telling Justin's story, I can remind you that your choices not only affect yourselves, but affect your family. So please go out every day and make good choices. Thank you.
Oh my God.
I wasn't there in 2002, but I'm never going to be able to get that picture out of my mind of her coming up and asking y'all, please help me. And you all were the people who knew how to help her and change her life. And now she gets the opportunity to speak truth to power in the lives of so many. So I feel really proud of this community. I think we're all here to be motivated and to be inspired and to think about the work that we go home to. And I know that it takes more than motivation and inspiration to continue that work. Now, as promised, I have a number of books to share with you. Dr. Halperin, as I mentioned, put about 16 books on his introductory syllabus. The course is called The Struggle for Human Rights. I think I've taken it 5 or 6 times as an auditing student in order to get through all of that. But there's also another course called Violence and Integration in the South. He'll let any of y'all audit it. So get that book list and you'll be overwhelmed. But I reached out to him this week and asked him about books that he thinks are particularly relevant for us right now as we go into our communities and continue this determined effort. I think I could share the names and the authors of these books, but you may forget them. So please come and find me. After this, I'm going to mention another opportunity to follow up together. But I want to share one piece of news that came from his either Holocaust news or human rights news list that many of you are familiar with. It talks about how the protest that has been happening in the United States has been somewhat ineffective because it's focused on the maybe bad behavior of individuals instead of a more targeted, narrow look at what we can do differently. And I'll never forget the story of these, I believe they were German housewives who, during the Nuremberg trials after World War II, set up support groups for people who had experienced the Holocaust so that they had places to go and avenues and networks of support to share their story. And it was in the sharing of the stories at the Nuremberg trials that led to the laws that we use today and crimes against humanity. And I think that's very powerful for all of us to go home equipped to take efforts as often as we can to make a difference. So please come find me. There's 4 great books that he's recommended. Last September, he sent me about 8 books. I'll just say them now. Yeah, he's like, this is what I'm reading in September. I think it took me all school year just to get through about half. So anyway, here are his book recommendations for us today. The first is called Secrets of the Killing State, The Untold Story of Lethal Injection. This is by Corinna Barrett Lane. The second is called The Volunteer, The Failure of the Death Penalty in America, and One Inmate's Quest to Die with Dignity by Gianna Boney. Number 3 is called Death Penalty in Decline with a question mark, The Fight Against Capital Punishment in the Decades Since Furman v. Georgia. And the editor of that book is Austin Surratt. And he also mentioned if you're doing any death penalty abolition work in the UK, there was a Rillington Place crime, a prominent crime that led to an innocent person being executed. The book is called The Peep Show, and that refers to the murders at the Rillington Place by Kate Summerscale. So in the spirit of literacy, my dream is to create a human rights curriculum for struggling readers. So I hope that you'll be sending me the books that change your lives so that I can continue to share those with students. But with that, I'd like to welcome up our next speaker, someone who I've hosted in my home, as many of you have, who continues to change my life with her love for me and for my family. She's from Hollandale, Florida, but may be considering moving. If anybody wants to petition her to join you in your great community. I don't know if she wanted me to share that, but she's allergic to cats. Okay, so if you have a cat, you're not the one. I just finished Bill Pelkey's book about last week, and Bill Pelkey said that he knew it would be a miracle, like his work would really be the thing that it couldn't be without him, is if he ended up on Oprah. And as we all know, he ended up on Oprah. And perhaps sitting next to him on Oprah was our next speaker in 1988. And just one quick quote I'll share from SueZann, who's coming up next. She said, "I don't ask people to believe as I do, but I ask for them to give me respect and listen." And I think this community models that very well for all of us. So please join me in welcoming SueZann.
Is it dinner yet? Oh my goodness, I just had my tomato juice, my dinner, but I was trying to pretend it was a taco, but it didn't work. Let me tell you. Let's start a little bit by saying, stop executions now, but I want you to yell it as loud as you can. Are you guys ready?
Yeah.
Stop executions now! Stop executions now! Stop executions now! Amen, brothers and sisters. That's how we're going to play till it is abolished. As you all kind of know, I'm SueZann Bosler with a capital Z, and known as kind of like a victim survivor, as you will. I don't know if I'm going to survive this by midnight, but I'm going to try. I'm going to tell another story. Thank you for telling about Oprah, because that was an interesting experience, because actually other people on there was a mother that one son murdered someone and her other son was murdered by someone. So that was a very interesting show at the time. I will tell you, when we went to Africa, when he invited me to Africa, Bill Packy, it was exciting to me, because I go, oh great, we're going to go over there and we're going to teach them about the death penalty, and we're going to, you know, get some people listen to us, and they're going to be excited. And you know what happened? I went over there and they taught me. I didn't teach them anything. It was the most beautiful experience. I'm getting chills right now. The most beautiful experience of my life. Those beautiful, beautiful people with very little, but with a smile on their face. My interesting experience started on December 22nd, 1986 in South Florida. My dad took a job in Opelika. It was a really bad area. And I don't know if anybody's heard of Church of the Brethren, but it's Church of the Brethren is kind of like with a Quakers and Mennonite sisterhood church, peaceful church. And my dad took a job, and our house was attached to the church, parsonage it's called. And we always had people coming for food, counseling, help, you name it. People always were coming to us for something. And we had regulars coming, and then we had new people coming for a new challenge. On this day, December 22nd, 1986, my dad and I went Christmas shopping to go so we could have presents to take up to the rest of my family. My sister just had a baby, so we were going to go up to meet them. We came home. I went to get ready to go out again, and my dad was reading in the living room, and I heard the doorbell ring, and that doorbell ring changed my life. When I went out to hear if I knew the person or if it's somebody else or regular, I didn't hear any voices at all. I just heard my dad making painful noises. And for a couple seconds, I'm like, did I hear it correctly? I go walking out into the hallway, and I'm looking down the hallway, and my dad's holding onto the kitchen doorway, and a man is stabbing him with a knife over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. He went down on his hands and knees. I screamed and went towards him, and he heard me, so he turned around, and the knife was coming towards me in the front, so I turned, and it 3 times in the back, and I went down. My dad tried to get up again, and he did it all over again, over and over and over and over and over, 22 times. He collapsed right there. I got up, and he put his hand on my shoulder here, and I'm looking at him with the knife by his head. My dad's crawling to the front door. I see the knife come to my face, so I turned my head, and it embedded into my head twice here. And I went down. I could hear him above me because he was all that work that he had just done. He was panting of all that, what he just did. So I could hear him watching me because he was watching to see if I breathe. If I breathe, then he would have to stab me more times to be able to not have a witness. I don't know if that's the first time in my life that I held my breath that long, because I must have convinced him. As soon as I heard my bedroom door open, we had a bamboo sofa, and my dad had collapsed by the front door, and I could see him clearly. Each breath he took was more difficult than the last, you know? So I had to, I mean, you know, this is the shortest time in my life that I talked to God, because I didn't have a lot of time. He would come out periodically from going from room to room, because we found out later why he was trying to find something. It was we didn't have anything to give him. He came in on drugs, because when I looked in his eyes, they were dilated. I couldn't even hear a clear word from his mouth. So there's one time when he came over and he got pissed off, and he put this big oversized chair on top of me. And I had just taken a shower. I was just wearing a short robe and underwear. And I can't tell you what he did to me. He did do something that offended me. So after that, I'm trying to, every time I hear him outside, to hold my breath, to pretend I'm dead so I could save Dad. He finally left, and I looked up underneath the chair, and he was looking around, and he had something wrapped around his hand. I found out later that he had stabbed me and Dad so many times. He had so much blood on his hand that he cut himself a couple times. So we actually, when we go through things to this day, we still find his blood. His blood. So once he closed the door, the first thing I did was get up from under there, go to the window, look, see which way he went, go to the phone. My goal was to get help on the way. The first phone call made me sound like I was a prank phone caller. So I angrily hung up and called back again, because I just needed to hear the 5 words, help is on the way. That's all I needed to hear. I had lost so much blood that I collapsed on the floor, and I was rocking, holding my head. I wasn't sure, but as I rocked, the drips of the blood came all over me. Finally, I saw the policeman come in, and I passed out after that. I just woke up in the ambulance, in the helicopter, and in ICU room. When I woke up, all I did was, is my dad alive? Is my dad alive? Is my dad alive? Nobody would answer me. They had to take this whole side out of hundreds of pieces of bone, and 2 parts of my brain were damaged by the knife, my memory and my speech. And instead of us going up to my family, they had to come down with us. When I heard my mom's voice, when I woke up from the surgery, first thing I said to her was Merry Christmas. And after that, what did I do? What question did I ask? Is my dad alive? Which I did for a whole week. I started getting suspicious towards the end of the week, because I started asking questions. What room is he in? What floor is he on? Because he was not feeling right. Something was not right. Finally, a week to the day later, everybody knows what a PK is, right? What's a PK?
Pastor's kid.
Preacher's kid. Since I'm a preacher's kid, okay, I should know what's going on. Wait, where was I? A week to the day, I see my mom, the doctor, the nurse, my sisters, and at the end there was a minister. No offense to ministers, but I knew, had the feeling something was not right. So when my mom turned my head and told me that Dad was not alive anymore, I basically lost it and didn't want to live anymore, because I didn't save his life. I was tearing out all the tubes that were in me. They had to sedate me and take me to a solitary room, and I couldn't ask the question anymore. I had to ask myself other questions, like, where the hell do I go to now? Who am I? What can I do? What should I do now? I was lost. I was very lost. I remember when somebody came from church to visit me, and he said one last thing before he left. He asked me the question, "SueZann, do you forgive him?" And I immediately, without even thinking, said yes. I thought, okay, yes, become a PK. I learned it. I should know it. It should be easy for me. But when he left, I was thinking, why am I not feeling so like I really meant it? So that was a whole nother travel journey for me to relearn about forgiveness. The next 10 and a half years, James Bernard Campbell, that was caught in the court system in South Florida, was a real bitch, because I thought, I had faith in the prosecutor that he would listen to me and my family to be against the death penalty. But I was wrong. And I was very vulnerable. I didn't know anything about the law or the courtrooms, or I didn't know much about it. So I trusted him, and he got the death penalty. And I'm thinking, did he not hear what I said? I thought the victim's, opinion would be important, but obviously not to him. He wasn't thinking of the victim. He was thinking of his career. 5.5 years in, after me traveling with Bill and Journey of other people, I was sitting on the stand before I did the witness in the first appeal. And I pointed to James and I said, "James, I forgive you, whether you accept it or not, I forgive you." And let me tell you, it almost felt like it was just me and him in that room, and the time stood still, because I didn't just say the words from my mouth. I said the words from my soul, and I really meant that. And at that moment, I felt I came in the courtroom like this, and after I forgave, I could stand like this, not being better than somebody, but being equal. Back on track. I had more energy and power. It was able to save James Bernard Campbell's life. June 13th, 1997. Yeah, right? Yeah, so it was the best day. We interviewed, there's all these cameras that interviewed. I was walking down the courthouse steps in the front, and each step I walked, I was like, now what do I do? I was kind of lost again. What do I do? Where do I go? But thank goodness for Bill Pelkey and all these people that I met helped me stay back on track and feel welcome, like Terri said, to all this that saved my life, really. Now, since I forgave him, I just wanted to read a couple little things that I've written down about forgiveness. Forgiveness is our soul's right. Forgiveness gives us freedom. Forgiveness is a gift to ourselves. Forgiveness is liberating. Forgiveness takes away our burdens. Forgiveness cleans our slate. Forgiveness renews our soul. Forgiveness is within all of us. Forgiveness helps me to live again. We have the eternal right to forgive, and forgiveness is my best friend. I'm going to bring up something else about, everybody knows Sonny Jacobs, who we unfortunately lost recently. But her story comes from my state in Florida. And thank goodness she got out off of death row, but it was a big journey for her, because her and Jesse Tafaro were the ones that were accused of killing lawful people. And it wasn't their fault. It was the other gentleman that was with them. And they had their 2 children in the car too. Jesse Tafaro was the one that was executed And his story is known because in Florida they were using the electric chair. They had him with 2 feet of flames coming out of his head after the first button was pushed. So they had to push it again for him to die. Then, as we all know, Mickey Dickoff, a friend of hers from high school, came along and helped prove their innocence. It was too late for him to come back, but we got Sonny Jacobs, the most amazing woman that all of us know. This lady is amazing, can do, has done, and will continue to do, because we're not going to forget her name. Where do we go from here? What are we supposed to do? What can we do? Even if we don't have a story like mine and Terri and other people. I'm going to repeat it because I know I've said this before. We could wear a button, but not just at these places. You know what I do? I go to the grocery store with one of my death penalty shirts on. I wear a button. I put a bumper sticker on my car. Write somebody on death row. Write your governor. Don't do it just when we do these things. We have to keep these words, stop executions now, almost every day for people to see, to think about, to talk about, to debate, to see where it's going or where it could help to abolish the death penalty. I have been by myself most of the time these past 7 executions in Florida this year. I'm alone, but technically I'm not alone. I feel Bill Pelkey with me. I feel you all with me. And I'm never going to stop doing that until it is abolished. I also wanted to say about the amnesty, I call them kiddos, because they're so nice and young and beautiful, to keep continuing being with us and us with you to work through this, to be where we need to be to abolish the death penalty. So thank you very much. This was after I was stabbed in the head after the first surgery. And this is my dad. He's not my pastor. He's my dad. I didn't save his life. But every time I talk, I feel him with me to help me continue this work. I feel that this is a part of me surviving for this, working with everyone, that I will never let down. But I have to show, the picture of James Bernard Campbell. James Bernard Campbell is not just a number on his uniform. James Bernard Campbell has a mother and a father. He has a name, James Bernard Campbell. It was not my choice to be God and get him executed. I thought to myself, I had to think of all these things before I 100% forgave him. I had to think, if I were going to help the government murder him, what would that make me? I would be just like him. And I refuse to be like him because I have so much stuff to work on already here. I don't need one more. And if they kill him, his family would be more victims into our system that we don't need either, right? So one other thing that I said was, if I forgive him, does that mean it's going to take away my right to cry and miss my father? No. Before I 100% forgave him, I cried angry tears. Today, I'm crying. I miss my damn father, tears. And I have every freaking right to do so. Nobody's taking that away from me. I want to say to the government, why do you execute people? who kill people, to show us Americans that killing people is wrong, right? Amen. Okay, and we have one more. I have a couple other things to say, but I would love to just get my friend up here, Jack, to sing my dad's favorite song. And if other people that I usually bring up here can join us too. And let it begin with me. Peace on earth, let it begin with me. Let
Be peace on earth.
the peace that was meant to be, with God as our Father, brothers all are we. Let me walk with each other in perfect harmony. Peace begin with me. Let this be the moment now. With every step I take, let this be my solemn vow. To take each moment and live each moment in peace eternally. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. And I say we begins with us. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. You can't have that, Shujaa. I'm done with it. I'm done with it.
Thank you, SueZann. That was a beautiful, beautiful time of sharing. We have one more wonderful speaker today. And before I jump into that speaker, I just want to give an opportunity for everybody here to meet together. We're going to start a new group, and it's going to be called the Dedicated Abolitionist Support Haven, DASH. And this group was partly inspired by my friend Phyllis Pautrat, who has recently experienced a beloved friend's execution and the aftermath of going into a community that doesn't understand what it means to miss that person and to have loved that person. So if you're looking for support, this group is for you. If you're looking for learning, this group is for you. If you're looking for friends, this group is for you. Our plan is to meet the first Monday of the month at 1 p.m. Eastern time. I'll follow up. Yeah, it's virtual, so that way we can meet from all over the place. And the first book we've selected, Kimber has already finished it. Actually, Dale Brumfield came here a couple of years ago and talked about closing the slaughterhouse in Virginia. And part of what he did was go into churches and speak to people in churches. And if that resonates with you, then join us. And if some other way of ending the death penalty and getting ideas and having support resonates with you, then reach out to us. So with that, I'll mention that after our last speaker, we're going to have an opportunity to toll the bell together, and in celebration of Delaware's recent legislation. But we'll sing one more song as well. Now, our last speaker for tonight is new this year. I believe this is the first time joining us, and we say very, very special welcome to everybody who's here for the first time. We hope it will not be your last. This speaker today's name is Rachelle Zola, and part of what she does is she works as a restorative practitioner. She grew up in Long Island, New York, and now lives in Oak Park, Illinois. And in her past, I noticed that she also worked with with children with special needs and their families. And she's taken a number of pilgrimages, and I'm hoping that you'll be able to share that with us today if that's what you choose to talk about. But please help me welcome Rachelle.
So my path here is very different than everyone I've heard for the last 4 days. I am so humbled. I am so blessed. I am so honored. All that you have shared. I've been listening to everyone, and how I got here is Abe invited me to come, and then he invited me to speak. And even yesterday I said, Abe, am I the right person to be up here? Because I come from a very different background. I have not heard your stories. So I will start with how I even became an activist. I live in Chicago, Illinois, North Lawndale, which is mostly a Black community. In 2019, before that, I was living in Ecuador, working in a children's home where children were so abused, they were taken out of their homes, or they were true orphans. And I was home free. I had just left a 40-year marriage. We both dearly loved each other, but we had different paths. So now it's like, who am I? So I did that, and I traveled to Peru, went to just some shamans, went up to Mexico, and a dear friend of mine, her husband had passed away. And she had texted me that she's having a bad day. So I just said, call your friends. They're in Tucson, call them. And instead she texted me and said, can you come? And it was like, well, I guess that's what the universe had for me to do. So I got there and I helped her for 4 months. And then it was again, I wasn't thinking I was coming back to the States. And I get this calling, I get these callings. And this calling said, you are going to Chicago and you're going to be engaged in the Black and brown community. And you're going to listen. That's all the directive was. Not very much to go on. And my friends are like, are you crazy? You don't know anyone. You've never ever been there. And so I drove there. And the first week I got there, the first night, from the very first night, I'm engaged in the Black community. I rented a room for a week and I said, I will have a place by the end of the week. But I was exhausted. I'd been driving all day, and the woman says, this is a food desert. And I said, that's okay. I just need to walk. And I felt so guided. I've been so guided. So I'm walking, and there's a police station. And every year there's this night out with the police in the community. And there was hot dogs, and there were people. And I introduced myself. And remember, I mean, you don't see the red hair. But I have red hair and this is my skin tone, not like the people that have much more melanin in their bodies than I do. And they embraced me right away. They told me to go to this church. I went to trainings and seminars and symposiums and conferences. Wherever anyone told me to go, I went. And the question was, who is this 71-year-old white woman and why is she here? I was asking myself the same question. I didn't have a clue. One of my dear friends even called me, and I was only there maybe 2 weeks, and she said, who the hell do you think you are? And I said, Rachelle? That was the only answer I had. I really had planned, I don't have a plan of what to say because I've been listening to all of you and I say, okay, what can I share with you? So what I can share is that here I was, and I was going to all these things, and literally I kept showing up, and they're like, oh no, she's good. She's been here before. You know, she hands out hot dogs, she puts up chairs, she goes to seminars. And they were vouching for me. And what was really hard at first was that people would come up to me and say, you give us hope. I've been hearing all of you talking about hope. And I'm looking at them and say, I haven't done anything. I said, you don't understand. You keep showing up. you keep showing up. You didn't come with an agenda. You didn't come to fix us. You definitely didn't come with money. They asked me, do I need money? And it's like, but you're here. And so people start to ask me, do you want to interview me? And I'm just this person. I came literally with with one suitcase and 2 boxes. And one of the boxes, I love to paint walls. One of the boxes was my drop cloths and my rollers. That was all I had. And people started to share their stories. And that's why I'm looking at the power of, Abe invited me, and now I see again the power of the story. And that's what I do. I share stories. So people began sharing their stories I'd never heard before. Here was this woman who's traveled to Ecuador and Jordan and Peru and Japan. That's where one of the journeys was by pilgrimage. But it took me coming to Chicago to learn about my own country, to learn what we've been doing to the Black community. Today, I got there August 2019. By March 2020, we had COVID. So I got shut down. But I already knew what I needed to do. They shared their stories, and I said, can I share your stories on YouTube? And they said, yes, please. And the comment was to me was that you, looking the way you do, they will listen to you. If we tell our stories, unfortunately, they think we're lying. They think we're just making it up. They think we're exaggerating, we're complaining. And they said, yes, if you do it, they'll listen. So I got on YouTube, and then we did a Zoom gathering, which was all about anti-racism, a group of 15 to 25 people. And in that process, and this I'm getting to, is that my friend Willie, he started to say, Rachelle, I never thought I'd talk about reparations. And he's in his 60s now. And I mentioned I get these callings, and all of a sudden, Rachelle, you're supposed to do a hunger strike. And so I did a 40-day hunger strike. But what was important about that was a liquid hunger strike. But what was so important about that was because all my friends were like, you're going to die. I wasn't planning on 40 days. I didn't know how long I'd last. I'm figuring 30 because I looked it up, and people say, okay, you can make it through 30 days, and it's like, and they said, but, people came up to me and said, we expected you to be a bigger person. They're like, you wanted to go on a diet, and I mean, they were serious. And it's like, no, I'm supposed to do this. And what it was for, so the bill is called HR 40, the Commission to Study and Develop Reparation Proposals for African Americans Act. But here's the thing that came up to me, which was real important when I was listening to Jeff, I believe his name, when he said getting dirty. So I had to think about it, because when I get a calling, it's like, okay, is this really a calling? Is this just, something that pops into your head? And what I came up with, I have a younger brother who's 6 years younger than me, who has cognitive disabilities. And he is the love of my life. You don't get to him. I'm going to be there. You have to go through me to get to him. So I'm thinking about this. What would I do for Michael? And then I had my husband, my former husband, who was a Vietnam vet. And he was given a number in the 60s. And I thought about him. It's like, okay, Gary went off to war, having no idea what he would be willing to die for. We didn't have a clue. So I had to look at that, and I really was able to say, yes, I'm willing to die for my Black brothers and sisters, my siblings, my cousins. And I've been to things where I've sat in circles. I do a women's show where people have sat around, and it's a scary time right now. Right? It's scary for you to be out here. You don't know who's coming around. And so what are you willing to do? And I understand I don't have children. I don't have a marriage. I get that. And so can I risk more? But the idea that I would ask all of you is, what are you willing to do? That was the question that SueZann asked. What are you willing to do? So that's the one thing I really want to bring up, because it really was so impactful, because I had to look at it. It's like, what are you willing to do? Fast forward, I again, a calling. I knew I needed to do a one-woman play. And so I had all these stories. I carry stories. That's what I love about all of you these last 4 days, because now I carry your stories. You travel with me. You are in my heart. And so I knew. I went to this Melissa Lorraine. She's a theater Y. She's probably more than 30 years younger than me, a white woman. I had met her the week before because I went to one of her performances, and she has a Black ensemble. And the next week I get this idea, a call, and I say, oh, I should do a one-woman show. I am not a performer. I've been a teacher, but I'm not a performer. I'm not an actor. I went to her and said, I have an idea. I'm supposed to share these stories. And she hears me out, and she says, okay, I'm going to do it. She said, I've never written a play for anybody, and especially someone who never even has an outline. I was like, okay. It took a year, and we made this, and then it was like, okay, how are you going to distribute it? Because we were very clear. Our theater group is in a Black community, and we're very clear that the play is for white people. I'm sharing my ignorance and what I've learned, and they're not going to come. So I was like, okay, you're going to go to them. And then she asked me, because like you mentioned that I have done pilgrimage, she said, do you want to walk? I used to walk. And I was like, yes, of course. So I walked last year, took 6 months, but I walked 825 miles for racial liberation, walking from Chicago through Selma to Montgomery. But the reason I'm mentioning that is there is so much love in this world. I'm really clear. I walked it by myself 10 miles a day, and I'm really clear if I had a different colored body, it wouldn't have been the same. I know that. But I also know that the people I met, hundreds of people that I met along the way, there was so much love. There was so much thank you for showing up. So that's the piece that I just love about this, is that you just keep showing up. And that gives everyone hope. And so I am so blessed. And one more thought that I have, I'm trying to think, what was another thought that I really wanted to say? Who do we consider? Who do we consider? Now, this is a brand new, deeper feeling. My friend, who has my same birthday, he's a Black man, he's 20 years younger. The day before, on May 15th, I sent him a text message saying, happy birthday, haven't seen you in a while, happy tomorrow birthday. He writes me back, thank you for considering me. I would have written, thank you for reaching out. But he used, thank you for considering me. And he said, you must think I haven't thought about you. And I said, no, I know you're busy. He said, let's have, so we started Justice background. He said, let's have a two-way circle. We'll all get on Zoom. And we did. And the word, he kept talking about the word consider. And here's the thing that so reached me. So I say in my play, these are my words. Somebody put my words into a play form. I say, this is a tribute to all the people in Chicago and beyond who too many have dismissed, deemed as invisible, or hate because of the color of their skin. I never even considered their lives, their lived experiences, the trauma and pain and harm that they experience every day. Hard to admit and necessary, because together we're going to change the course of history. Now, I've said that for over a year and a half as I performed this show, and each time I get an ache. Each time I talk to a Black person and say those words, I ache. But I've never stopped long enough to think about that ache. And I think about it now. It's like if someone said, Rachelle, I didn't even consider you. And people who have entrusted me with their stories. And they entrusted me with their stories because they said, you've been authentic. Thank you for sharing the truth. And so I took this all the way down south, and each time we sat in circle, that's what I heard. Thank you for sharing the truth. Someone today earlier had said, someone calls them brave. And I said, I'm not brave. She was referring to herself. And I said, for me, brave means being vulnerable, being able to say, I'm not perfect in any way, shape, or form. I've made lots of mistakes. And I'm willing to expose myself. So to you, all of you, thank you for exposing all of you for who you are, for who you are. I am so blessed and honored. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachelle. For our last time together during this portion of the presentation, I would love to invite up Art Laffin. He's going to sing a song for us or with us. We're going to sing a song together. As he's coming up, I'm just going to mention again, I believe our closing circle is at 11:15. We've been preparing a meal for everybody. I've heard that people are hungry and maybe looking forward to great food. We have chicken tostadas. We have vegan options, a pasta spinach salad for those who are able to join us, homemade chocolate chip cookies. So I hope that will be everybody. And I just thank you for this presence here today. And after we sing a song together or before, we'll ring the bell together as well. So there you go, Art.
Why don't we give our grand stand a round of applause for that? Thank you so much. And thank you to all the speakers. We are all on a journey of hope together, from violence to healing. Amen? As I sing this song, I just want to hold up tonight. Everybody won't be here for the closing circle, but today, a number of years ago, there's a special thing that happened at midnight where Abe and Beth were married right here on this sidewalk. Abe, how long was it? What's the anniversary? 2006.
You might mess this up.
2006, sounds right.
It's gonna be 20, so it means it's my 19th anniversary.
19th anniversary for Abe and Beth. Can we give them a round of applause and applause to Beth who's watching? Yeah, so there's a couple songs that's kind of running through my mind, and I wonder I could do one right now and then maybe one after we ring the bell, because there's a bell in the song, and so I think it will come better after the. So okay, but what I'm feeling tonight, and what I've felt the last few days, is that we're all about giving each other light and hope. And I heard that light mentioned a number of times tonight. And this is a song that's inspired by the words of the great civil rights worker Ella Baker. And it's a song that if only people who are in power could understand and take to heart these words, our society would be very different. And really, it's about creating the beloved community, which we are all about. So it goes like this. Some of you have heard it before. Give light, and people will find the way. Give light, and people will find the way. Give light, and people will find the way. People will find a way, I do believe. Try it. Give light, and people will find a way. Give light, and people will find a way. Give light, and people will find a way. People will find a way, I do believe.
Does everybody know who belongs to that black bag over there? All right, thank you. Carry on, Art.
It's mine.
You got it. All right. We know whose bag it is. Okay. All right. Thank you, officers. Please join us in singing. Stand together, and people will find a way. Stand together, and people will find a way. Stand together, and people will find a way. People will find a way, I do believe. Teach peace, and people will find a way. Teach peace, and people will find a way. Teach peace, and people will find a way. People will find a way, I do believe. Be love, and people will find a way. Be love, and people will find a way. Be love, and people will find a way. People will find a way, I do believe. As Brother Bill Pelkey said, the answer is love and compassion for all humanity, right? Stand for justice, and people will find a way. Stand for justice, and people will find a way. Stand for justice, and people will find a way. People will find a way, I do believe. Give light. Give light, and people will find a way. Give light, and people will find a way. Give light, and people will find a way. People will find a way, I do believe. People will find a way, I do believe.
Thank you, Art. John, will you hold this? 49 years ago, this place became a crime scene when this U.S. Supreme Court allowed the resumption of executions. It is a shameful space. It is a crime scene. But tonight we get to celebrate the liberation of the state of Delaware from the death penalty. This bell has been tolled outside of the death row prison in Delaware, in Smyrna, Delaware, for 16 executions. And then the Delaware Supreme Court threw out its death penalty. And then the Delaware legislature last year scrubbed out of the state statute all mention of empowerment of the death penalty, of how to do it. And then, what was it, Monday night, the 30th, the Delaware legislature passed a bill to create an amendment to the state constitution to prohibit the death penalty from coming back in that state. Now, it's not quite done yet. The way it is in Delaware for a constitutional amendment, you've got to pass the bill twice. So 2 years from now, after the next election, they'll run that bill again, and hopefully it will pass. And then that will happen. Delaware will become the second state to have prohibited the death penalty in its state constitution. Written across this bell are the words, Delaware citizens opposed to the death penalty. This bell was made for that organization, and it was told outside of every execution. And that organization said, we don't have executions anymore, what are we going to do? They can put this in a museum, or we could send it out to send its good vibes to the rest of the country. And they called up and said, Abe, you want to take this bell? And that's what we've been doing ever since. It's been outside of the state legislatures and prisons where executions have been carried out in Indiana, and Alabama, and Oklahoma, and South Carolina. Am I missing one? Florida, thank you. And we'll take it anywhere that this is happening in other places, because it can be, it's a symbol of hope. It's a symbol of the possibility for abolition. So today, and a lot of people like to declare something as they're tolling this bell. Today, I want it to be about the celebration for Delaware. So please, let's toll this bell. Let's ring this bell for Delaware tonight, and for the hope and the promise of abolition in our country. Just come on up and give the rope a tug. It doesn't have to be all that hard. It's got to be loud, so watch yours. And anybody that wants to have a hand on it, please come and do this. It's powerful. You'll never forget it. And again, towards abolition.
Yeah, Delaware.
It's not about what they did, it's what we do in response. Way to go, Delaware.
Abolition for all.
That's yours, right? I've lost mine. Second time.
Abolition. Abolition for Delaware and everywhere.
New Jersey, Pennsylvania is going to be next.
Yeah.
Celebration of Delaware in memory of my sister Jennifer Ann McCoy.
I ring this bell for all the victims of violence of any kind, especially victims of murder, school shootings, suicides, all kinds of ridiculous, horrific gun violence, and especially for Nancy Frankelstreit, who was killed by my niece. And my niece is now in prison in Maryland, where they don't have the death penalty. And everyone in the victim's family was profoundly grateful that there is no death penalty in Maryland. Amen. So for everyone, for all of us, God have mercy.
The death penalty denies the redemptive love of God. Let it in.
Yeah. Here, now from up here. Give her her double chin. Or my double chin. See? But
Delaware and peace everywhere.
much better.
We've abolished the death penalty in 23 states now. Florida, Mississippi, Alabama, South Carolina, Oklahoma, Arizona, California, Oregon, and other states need to follow the lead of Delaware. And
I'm gonna text you.
right. Oh, Texas. Sorry, my brain is not working.
Kansas.
Texas, Kansas, every other state that still has the death penalty on their books needs to follow the example set by Delaware and all of the other states.
You give us hope, Delaware.
If I had a hammer, I'd hammer in the morning, hammer in the evening, all over this land. I'd hammer out danger, I'd hammer out warning, I'd hammer out the love between my brothers and my sisters, all over this land. Ooh, if I had a song, I'd sing it in the morning, I'd sing it in the evening, all over this land. I'd sing out danger, I'd sing out warning, I'd sing out love between my brothers and my sisters, all over this land.
Ooh,
I got a bell,
I'd ring it in the morning, I'd ring it in the evening, all over this land.
see it so that you can hear it across the street. And back behind us. I'd sing out the love between my brothers and my sisters.
All over this land. Ooh, now I
got a hammer,
and I got a bell, and I got a song to sing all over this land. It's the hammer of justice, it's the bell of freedom, love. It's a song about the love between my brothers and sisters. All over this land. Woo! Not working, bud.
All right, folks. West Truly, we need to give her a big round of applause. We've got just over 3 hours before we get to break our fast. And there's a little bit of work to do. So we're going to ask for some volunteers to help with packing some things up inside. But we're leaving the tables. We're leaving a basic setup here because the tables will be eaten off of. We do need the banners brought in and collapsed, and the wood broken apart, put in the trash. We're going to start with new wood next year. All the banners get rolled up. There'll be other instructions once you get inside. We're leaving the chairs out, but we do need to consolidate them for now. People want to sit, but we need to consolidate the chairs so that we're not just all out there, but we're not in them. Okay. So with that, Scott, I think we've got a great meal coming. We need to just bring in these pads, the banners, and otherwise some help inside.
But you don't want the chairs around